talking about.
Obviously there's a chance that they could go.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming this morning. I'm sure with about 3 weeks before the kids come back to school, there's lots of questions, anxiety, stress, concerns. We're right there with you. But I want to let you know that our administrative team, our meetings with the teachers, the Board of Education, we are all on board to return here full-time come September 11th. I'm sure you are aware that we delayed the start of school a couple days because there are a lot of trainings that our staff and our teachers need to go through, and we thought that it was appropriate to make sure that we are comfortable coming back to receive your children. So the first question was, why are the kids just coming in on a Friday, and why don't you just have them come the following Monday? We actually thought it was very strategic to have the students come back their first day on a Friday. I'm not going to beat around the bush, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's going to be nuts. And for them to come back and kind of walk through the day with the teachers here and have them understand what the protocols are, it's nice just to have them here for a day and then leave for the weekend. It gives the teachers and the administrators time to just monitor, and we're going to be tweaking protocols and just observing what's going on, but it gives us a chance just to get the kids back here for a day. So we thought it was actually a very well-timed date to have the kids just come in on a Friday, just so we're able to observe things moving into a full week. So what we want to do here today is go over all of the protocols, procedures, things that we have put in place to return safely here in the fall. We're also going to discuss our hybrid plans and our full remote learning plans. If you remember the state guidance, and I'll go over a timeline, we had to submit our reopening plans to state ed. And within those guidelines, we had to do a 3-tiered process. What would it look like if we reopen? What does it look like if it's hybrid? And what does it look like if it's remote? But the decisions of what plan we're going to implement is left up to the local school districts. I can safely say, and I'm proud to say, that we are planning and can open fully in the fall based on all of the guidance. We have the space to do it. We can social distance the kids while they're in the building. Our transportation has tweaked some of the bus runs, and we're able to provide transportation. So when we hear other school districts either going hybrid or remote, everybody's end goal is to be back full time. But there's just some other challenges that the districts have that they really can't overcome. So it's not that they don't want to return, but again, it could be a transportation issue, it could be a space issue. I know in my own home district, my children are going back hybrid because they just have challenges that we don't have to deal with here in Oakfield. So I'm very lucky and very proud to say that we can return here in the fall full time. So we'd like to take the next 45 minutes or so to run through the slides. The administrative team is here, so we'll each kind of present what the buildings look like, what the departments look like, and then at the end, certainly answer any of your questions. We do have a list of questions that were pre-submitted, which is great, and we'll answer those. But at any time, because this isn't a very large group, I had about 50 people sign up. I don't know if they're coming this evening, but certainly if there's just a burning question as we're going through something, feel free to shout it out, raise your hand, and we'll get to that. I just told you to shout out and raise your hand. I figured there would be about 50 or 60 people here, so again, if you have a burning question, feel free to throw it out there. Just a couple guidelines that we want to talk about when we have a community forum. I certainly understand that people have their own philosophies, their own beliefs, their own political, agendas. We certainly understand that. So what we want this meeting to be is really about you understanding the background of our reopening process, how we can do this, what you can expect, what your children can expect. Our rationale, again, for our decision making is every district wanted to be back full-time. We are one of very few, again, based on the challenges, that can do that. And then, there might be questions of, well, why are you doing this? There's always a rationale and a reason behind our decision making, so we'd like for you to get a glimpse into that. Again, we'll provide you information on all of our 3 plans, and we certainly want you to listen to your community members, and certainly administration. There's a lot of questions out there. And if you're watching the governor, which, remain quiet on that. I do agree with him that you need to feel comfortable bringing or sending your child here. And we want to make sure that we're very transparent, that you have all the information, and you're not concerned if and when you do send your child here. So we certainly want you to see clarification and be comfortable. And then again, provide comments, suggestions, and feedback. I must have gone in over the last 2 or 3 weeks and changed our reopening plans a dozen times. Those documents are live working documents. These plans are live working plans. We actually changed a couple slides first thing this morning just based on some guidance that comes out or something that we think about and say, hey, this is a better way to handle this. So at any time you have a suggestion or a comment or a question, please email me, give me a call. I have a cot in my office. I haven't been home in a month. So I will certainly get back to you, but we're always looking for input because I will tell you this, we always don't have the answer. And that's the scary part of what everybody is facing. We've never been through this before, and so we're doing the best we can. And we said that to the teachers, and the teachers are on board, and we get input from the teachers because they're on the front lines. So it's just great to hear people's comments and suggestions to make this, a really strong and concrete plan. And again, our beliefs are based on the whole, not for some. I get it. There's some people probably out there in the community that want to find me in a dark alley. We're making decisions for what the community as a whole wants and not for individual people. We did send home that reopening survey back in July, and over 80% of the community wanted to return in full. That, to me, is pretty substantial that the community wants the kids to be in school at full capacity. What this meeting is not is political. We said the same thing to our staff. Everybody has a belief, everybody has their own story, but bottom line is we're here to educate our children. And the protocols and procedures that we talk about today, there's no ands or ors or yeah, I'll do this or no, I won't. No, this is what it needs to be. So we have to put our political positions aside. We don't want to judge people's decisions, what families want, what individuals want, other school personnel, because again, I'm sure obviously you're out there in the community and you hear it. We see things on Facebook, and depending on what other districts are doing and what other families believe, it can get very heated, and we don't want that. We also don't want one group of people being pitted against the other, and we also don't want to compare ourselves to other districts because, again, they have different challenges, they face different aspects of reopening, and certainly I don't want to throw another school district under the bus. I certainly don't want to be thrown under the bus by another district. So we just need to make sure that we're doing best for our own communities. And then again, people are going to have questions, concerns, beliefs, ideas. We just don't want to be, attacking our community members. So real quick, the timeline. Back in July, we had a first task force meeting. Unfortunately, we had scheduled this the day or the evening after guidance was supposed to come out from the state. Of course, it was delayed. So we had a task force meeting, and we went over what we thought the guidance was going to be. And so that task force was about 50, a committee of 50 people that consisted of board members, teachers, parents, students, and the administration. So it was a real nice canvas of the different stakeholder groups within the community. And a couple weeks later, when the guidance came out, we did submit our plans to state ed. They do have them, and we're not on the list of 101 schools that didn't submit them. So our plans are into state ed. We can be under the assumption that they are approved, unless we hear differently. I haven't heard differently. So we'll get the green light to go ahead. And then, of course, we were waiting to see what the governor was going to say. Based on the governor's metrics, on August 7th, he gave our Finger Lakes region, that's the region that we fall under, the approval to reopen. Once again, he left the decision up to the local school districts on what plan they were going to use and what their processes for reopening would be. Right after we had the approval to reopen, our task force meeting, our task force met and we solidified our 100% in-person learning and teaching plan. That first meeting, we actually divided up the committee into 3 different committees. One was for an in-person, 100% full capacity returning to school. The second committee was our hybrid committee, and the third committee was the remote. And some of our administrators ran those subsets, subcommittees, and we looked at the guidance. Teachers and the parents and the students and the board members provided us feedback, and that's what you're going to see here today is what the plan ended up being. Obviously today, I have a presentation to you this morning in regards to what these plans are. I also have an evening presentation at 5 o'clock going over the same thing. And then next Monday, I will be live streaming this information as well for parents that don't feel comfortable being here, but maybe are at work or would rather live stream it and do a video conference with me. And we'll do that next Monday at 5 o'clock. 2 weeks from today, our teachers come in. They'll be here Thursday before Labor Day, and they'll also be here Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday before the students come in on Friday. Lots of trainings. We usually have a big breakfast and a big kickoff. I was going to have coffee and donuts here for you this morning, and unfortunately that's a no-no. So it's going to look very different, and but we're ready and we're prepared. And then obviously the students' first day would be September 11th, that Friday. So I want to talk to you about what our plan is. This is our plan. Again, I will go over the ins and outs of the hybrid plan and the remote plan, but those are, I guess, alternative plans for us. Our plan is to return here full capacity in September. The biggest question, masks. What is that going to look like? If you didn't see what the governor said yesterday about gyms, the gaiters, the bandanas, and the buffs are not preferred. I will almost guarantee you within the next 2 weeks, he will prohibit them in schools. So right now, what we're asking families, what we're asking parents is to purchase and provide well-fitted cloth masks. Those are the best. I know with the 800 kids that are going to be in this building, the masks are all going to be different. Everybody's going to have their own type of face covering. When we talk about masks must cover the nose all the way down over the mouth. They cannot wear face shields. Face shields, some of those clear plastic face shields, are not acceptable unless there is an accommodation that we need to provide. So when the guidance was kind of cloudy on this for a while, when they talked about face coverings, it's face masks. The ones that you are wearing right now, the one that I had on before I took it off to talk. Those are what the children need to wear. Right now, again, the gaiters, the bandanas, they may be easier for kids and they may like them more. I would tell you to stay away from that because, again, I'm thinking that the governor, once we get closer to September, will prohibit those in schools. Did you have a question?
Do you recommend sending several masks?
Yes. Yes, and that's part of the slide too, yes. Send several masks because you never know, they may lose it. I know that if I'm wearing mine and I'm talking for a while, it kind of gets a little gross. The cloth mask you can wash, so I would, yes, send a couple, have a couple extra in their lockers, in their backpacks, absolutely. So I'm going to turn this over now to Josh. He's our head of our transportation, just to go over some of the questions and some of the protocols and procedures in providing children transportation. So,
morning, everyone. As you all know, we all must mask on buses. We can't let you on the bus without a mask. We expect you to be there with a mask on, wear it the whole time, and because of that, we're going to be a little bit of close proximity on the bus, so it's safer that way. The student seating, if you're with a family member, you can sit together, or if you come from the same household, that was at daycares, there are some daycares where there's multiple kids, we will put you in the seat. In the elementary bus, we could have 3 in the seat. You still have to have a mask on, but that allows us to get to about 50% on our capacity on our buses, but we're under that on our buses. I see the maximum right now we're at is about 28 kids. Maximum capacity is about 65. So we have a good plan for that. We will be spread out on the buses. No eating or drinking allowed, obviously, because to do that you have to take your mask off. We don't allow eating or drinking normally on the bus, but we're really trying to make sure that does not happen. Seating arrangements on the buses, elementary school, so we'll talk about this a little too. We'll seat them on the bus according to what door they get off of, so that the pre-K kids and kindergartners will be the first seats on the bus, and they'll be the first kids off the bus when we get here. There's 5 doors they will enter, and they'll be seated accordingly on the bus. The buses will pull through one at a time and drop students off. Up at the high school, we got staggered entrances. We have 3 entrances in the back loop for bus drop-off. And depending on what grade you're in, those students will use each door there. In the afternoon, we're going to try to put people up front, first kids off, and then we'll see them that accordingly, so they're not crossing as much as possible on the bus. But cleaning will be big. We have time in between all our runs. Our drivers, in between the high school run to the elementary, they'll have about 15 minutes to spray and wipe down everything. And then after the elementary run, the same thing. And then there's the same thing in the afternoon runs. We'll have our high school run. They'll be able to clean in between. And at the end of the day, they'll do a deep clean and disinfecting to get ready for the next day. Is there any questions about busing? The seating there, that's kind of the design we're going to use. I mean, it's not going to work on every bus because we'll have a couple of kids in each seat with family members. But if we use the diagonal pattern here, it'll maximize the distance between kids on the bus. The windows will be open, the hatches will be open. That'll help the airflow through the bus. Even in the wintertime, it says below 50 degrees will keep them up, but we can have windows open in the winter. The buses are very warm once they get running. So even in the wintertime, if it's 0 degrees out, we can have a few windows down, and the bus will be warm, and the air will flow. So I think that'd be beneficial. Any questions? No?
Schedule staying the same?
The schedule is the same. The morning drop-off times will be a couple minutes off, but we'll be letting them off at the school at 8:30 on the buses, so about 8:45. In the afternoon, so high school will be about 2:45. So, about anything, just give or take, depending on situations. I'm always available for questions. You guys can call my office or send me an email if you have any questions. And also this year, the daily changes on busing is not going to be allowed. There's no more notes or change. If you need to change to busing, you're going to have to contact me. There's an email on the OA website under transportation. There's a transportation change form if you have to change pickup or drop-offs. So if you need help with that, you can always call
presentations and as we start the school year is the masking. And when you're standing, you must mask. It's kind of how we're describing it to our littles. So if they need to go to the bathroom in the classroom or they need to go sharpen their pencil, they need to put their mask on. Once they're back at their seat, they will be able to take their mask off. And I've got some pictures that will show you a better description of that. So this year, we had to add a couple of things to our supply list that we typically don't. We are asking for multiple masks to come to school labeled if possible. And something that we've seen used that's pretty successful in other schools that have already opened, they're using a lanyard, and they're putting a lanyard to one side of the mask so that when that's off, that's not falling on the floor. It won't fall on the floor, it won't get mixed up with other kids because sometimes that happens. So extra masks labeled, and if you can provide a lanyard, even better. We do have some lanyards that have been donated so that our kiddos have those available. Some of you have also maybe seen on the Facebook that we've had people donating money to have masks made. They're similar to what I'm wearing today, that every kid will walk into our classrooms from UPK to 5th grade, and there will be a mask already available and provided so that you have additional masks that you can provide. That would be fantastic, but we do have one for every student to start the school year, so I thank the community for rallying to support our kids. I don't know what happened to this. Having technical difficulties. This one cord, I think, is a little loose. Okay, so we're also asking for a beach towel or a bath towel to come to school in a Ziploc bag labeled. I'm showing you some visuals here. Because we're really encouraging people to be outside in the open air for learning opportunities, it will give them a space to lay and sit while they're doing some reading and learning, but it'll also give them a visual so they have a boundary, so they know where they should be, where they shouldn't be. Other students will know that they should not be sharing towels. And that will also give them an ability to take off their mask for mask breaks throughout the day. And the classroom one, you can see our teachers are going to get really creative, and there's going to be opportunities for students to leave their space or their desk area, and some kids will be on the floor on their towels so they can have a mask break as well. So we are talking about how can we keep this a fun learning environment, an engaging learning environment, but still making sure we're safe and healthy at the same time. So one of the biggest changes that we're facing is the arrival and dismissal of our students, because we can't have all of our students congregating together like they have in the past. Many of you are aware of our morning and our afternoon, I call it the fishbowl, where we've had 50 to 60 kids entering and exiting those areas and those spaces. So in an effort to keep our space and our safety, we've changed around our arrival and dismissal. If I go to this next slide, you can see we're allowing parents to come through where the bus loop is, but we have to have specific times because we can never have a bus and a car in at the same time. So for the morning, we're asking that the buses have privilege to drop first. At 8:30, they will unload. The building will be locked until 8:30 a.m. So if you try to drop your child off ahead of time, the doors will be locked and they will not have any supervision. So buses will drop from 8:30. They are going to go by hallway. Some of our letters are being delivered this week. You have your student's name for your homeroom and then an assigned hallway. So if you look at the front of our building, the very first hallway is hallway B. That's UPK kindergarten kids. The buses are going to pull up. Hallway B is going to unload. Then they will pull up to hallway C. They will unload. The main entrance is going to be for some of our older students, and then we'll go back to first grade, and we'll go back to the second grade, third grade will be the last hallway. So there's a map that we're sending home to kind of show you how that looks, along with what assigned hallway your students have. So after all the buses go through that loop, then we're inviting parents to come at 8:40, and we're going to be able to have you pull up front, unload all your students, they'll go to their designated halls. We will have a lot of people outside for supervision. I'm going to have hallway monitors assigned to every door. so that we have the consistency of one person at that door for arrival and dismissal, so they'll get to know which students are supposed to be at which doors. For breakfast, we are going to have breakfast delivered to the classroom, everybody from UPK to 5th grade. So in the morning when they're doing their attendance and lunch count, they're also going to do a breakfast count. There's going to be a roster that will be handed out when they come to the classroom to ask for so many breakfasts. On Mondays and Fridays, there are going to be more cold items, and on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, there'll be more of a hot breakfast option. And I think Mary would be able to speak to that if she is back. I know she's been in and out a few times this morning. So we will not be taking money at breakfast because it's on a cart. So your child will have to pay for breakfast and lunch at lunchtime, or prepay. Sending in a check is always acceptable, or the My School Box is available as well. For lunch, we are able to have all of our students go to the cafeteria. I know some schools have talked about other places and spaces for students to eat. We are not in that position. Our cafeteria is able to hold all of our students appropriately with the social distancing happening. We do have staggered cohorts that will go in and have lunch together. And we will have 2 lines, but the inside cafeteria line will be for your hot items. Your outside cafeteria line will be for your cold items. So if I was bringing a class in, some of my kids will go to one line, some of my kids will go to the other line. Everything will be prepackaged and grab-and-go meal style. They're going to grab what they need, and they're going to go to the cashier. This year, instead of having them punch in their numbers, because we don't want everybody touching the keypad, we are going to have a sticker placed on like an index card that will be laminated, and it'll just be a scanner option this year. We have a couple of those that will go to the homeroom so that the homeroom teachers have them. We'll be able to clip them to a lanyard if your child has their lanyard. But if your child loses one or forgets it or it gets destroyed and you need to remake it, the cafeteria staff can just look your child's last name up so that we can still provide the breakfast and lunch for them appropriately. For specials, we are going to have our students traveling to specials for most cohorts. There are a couple sections of students that have exceeded the allotted number of people in art. Our room is a little bit smaller, so we're working on that. Some of those cohorts may have art come to the classroom, and that would help reduce their travel, specifically thinking about the UPK students. For music, there are a couple grade levels that are a little bit bigger, but there is a false wall that can be pulled back, so Jordan and I are looking into that schedule. If there's not a band lesson on the other side, and we can open that door, then those children would still be able to go to music as well. This year, the restrictions for the band and our chorus, you have to have 12 feet social distancing around them. The elementary school, I can't do that. So instead of saying there's no band, we're just going to have them do lessons, individual lessons or a small group, until we can figure out how we're going to put a band together. So I keep talking about cohorts. A cohort is going to be a student group, your classroom. We are going to have all of our students stay in a cohort this year at the elementary school. The only time that your child will be leaving the classroom will be for the lunch and specials, or if they are a Tier 2 or Tier 3 student that needs extra support in reading or math, or if they have OT-PT speech and counseling. Any of those extra appointments, the teachers in charge of that group will come in and pick up your child and walk them to their designated area for their services, so that we don't have kids just in the hallways together. 4th and 5th grade will still remain departmentalized as we have in the past, but the change for this year, instead of the children moving to the 3 different classrooms, the teachers are going to move to the classrooms. So we have special ed teachers in each area. We'll have the special ed teacher that stays in that homeroom, stay with the kids to help monitor, and then they'll be able to move so that your kids will still have the support that they need and the supervision they need as the teachers are transitioning through their different classrooms. So here are a couple pictures to show you how our desks are separated and spread out so that they can maintain their social distancing all the way around. And if they're at their seats, then they are able to take their masks off. So we will have plenty of opportunities for those mask breaks. For dismissal, we're going time for the middle high school runs to really be sanitized appropriately, we're going to have parents available to pick up at 3:05 to 3:25. Once the parents are out of that loop, then we will have our buses pull up. Again, we're going to have the door monitors at every hallway to assist with which children are supposed to be going out, because we're not going to the main office anymore. So we are talking about Parent Square. It's a new communication app, and some of you may have already seen some of the we call them the news blasts that we've been sending out. We're going to try having the parent sign in or a message into the homeroom teacher to say, I'm here for dismissal. That parent would then, or once the teacher receives that information, they will have the child go to the hallway where the aide will be with a list for dismissal to make sure that the child is supposed to be going out. They will be there monitoring who's getting in what car, and then we also have identification tags. I think that they're orange papers. It says your last names of the student. It'll say the hallway that they're supposed to be assigned to, and we are sending home 2 for every family. This has to be in the front window when you pull up front as a visual for our aides and for myself and other people that are outside monitoring to see that you're getting the right child and making sure that connection is appropriate. If you forget your ID tag, we're going to have you pull over and wait until all of our dismissal is over so that we can verify that you are the right person picking your child up. Some families may need extra identification tags, and that's fine as long as that person that you're requesting have an additional one is in our school tool and they have permission to pick up your child in an emergency situation. And those are situations that we can clarify through Kingfisher, through our school tool, and we can send home extra identification tags on the first day of school. So if that's something that you're going to need, you can email her and we can get that already set up for you. We will not allow parents into the building this year unless you have a sick child. The birthday parties are going to be different. You can do virtual celebrations. We're not going to have the parent volunteers as we've had in the past. And so for pickup and drop off, we're also not going to allow parents into the building. And this is another visual just to show you a different angle of the new bus and parent drop off, and just making sure that we're never having buses and cars in the loop at the same time. Mr. Peterson.
Quick question.
Yep.
If a student needs to leave early to a doctor's appointment or something like that, obviously no parents in the building will use the parents for them at that point to let the teacher know they're there.
Okay, that was a great question. I'm going to reiterate that for her. The question is, if you have an early dismissal appointment, what do you need to do? What's the process? At that point, you will come to our door, you will ring the bell, and that visual interaction will happen with Mrs. Fisher. She will ask you to take your mask down so she can verify that you are the person you're saying you are. And then from there, she will open the door to you to the I call it the fishbowl. And at that point, you'll be able to wait there. If your child is ready and waiting, she will just have your child come out to you. And if not, then we'll just have you wait right there. If the child is sick, Susie may ask for you to go to her office. At that point, you would be then allowed into the second double doors. But anytime you're bringing your child, even if you're bringing the child late from like a dentist appointment, please walk your child up to the door, ring the bell, and identify that your child is there so that we can have the doors unlocked for you. Great question. Anything else before Mr. Peterson speaks? Okay.
Good morning, I'm Mr. Peterson. Just a quick show of hands, just so I know kind of specifically who I'm speaking to. How many of you have kids that will be in this building this year? Okay, so almost all of them. All right. One of the things that I'm making a conscious choice to do here, and I said this the other night at the board meeting, this year our goal is to have it as normal as possible. But there will be sacrifices that we all make. And it won't be, if I'm being frank, and Mr. Fiske said, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything in normal life. It won't be the same. It won't be, in my opinion, as enjoyable as an experience as things have been in the past. We have to make sacrifices. This mask is one of them. I'm choosing to leave it on to make a point. It's uncomfortable. I'll readjust it a million times. It mutes my voice. I hate it. But our teachers are going to have to wear one every day in class. And your kids are going to have to listen to those teachers as they deliver instruction with this on. So it's but one of many sacrifices that we make. It's not ideal, but our goal is to stay open. think that's the best plan for our kids, so we're gonna make whatever sacrifices we have to do in order to stay open, even if it's uncomfortable. The reality is, in this building, we are offering a choice. We want students who and families who are not comfortable to have the choice to stay home and learn remotely. We're providing that. And there are a number of families that have reached out. So right from the start, even though our goal is 100% in-person learning, right from the start, there will be 1, 10, 20, maybe 50 kids learning remotely. And we want to be prepared to transition to that should we need to. So the linchpin for this plan from a middle high school point of view is, can our teachers deliver instruction, both in-person learners and learners that are learning from home simultaneously? We believe that they can. They're working hard to prepare to do that. Once that's set, we can make this work. There's all kinds, no matter what happens, we can make this work. We are going to ask kids that are here to wear masks. It's not negotiable. When they're standing, generally, we're saying that's when the mask's on. When you're in your classroom, you can take it off. That's the break that the state is suggesting we provide. Those breaks are going to occur really 10 different times during the day, for the most part, while they're in class. But what we don't want to do is turn this into a police state where we're running around catching kids without masks and having uncomfortable conversations and offering punishments. We don't want to do that, but we know kids are kids. They tend to buck the system at times. They tend to choose which rules to follow. But we're going to ask kids, if you're not wearing a mask, if you're consistently on a radar with someone who's trying to get away without wearing a mask, we're going to politely invite those students to learn from home. Because our goal is to stay open. And when one kid or 2 kids or how many kids take that mask off, they jeopardize our goal, which is to stay open. So our code of conduct has been changed accordingly. And that's something we're going to promote right from the start. We're going to meet with students really the first days of school and explain these expectations. So the learning experiences here, as I mentioned, yes, we're in person, but some students are going to be remote because they choose to, and some students are going to be remote at times because they're forced to. Our students who leave campus to go to BOCES or attend the GCC academies will have times where they're both here in person and learning remote, and I'll explain. Typical BOCES schedule would look like this. If you have morning BOCES, you come here, you go to first period, which starts at roughly 7:30. It ends at roughly 8:15, then they get on a bus to go to BOCES. They come back, have lunch, go to class here. This is typical. Flip that, if you go to PM BOCES, you show up here at 7:30, after lunch you leave to go to BOCES. The change this year is resulting from what BOCES told us their schedule would involve. There are students who go to BOCES now will attend full-day sessions there on Thursdays and Fridays. Nothing we can do, except to find a way to make it work. And I think we have a plan. So if this is, showing you here what someone's schedule might look like if they went to morning BOCES. I'll explain. The remote learning lab is something we're going to ask our students to do. We have scheduled them in half days. So now instead of, if you're a morning BOCES student, as you see the schedule here, instead of getting on that bus and going to BOCES, you're going to go to our remote learning lab, which is going to be our library. And there, you're going to catch up on the work you missed on Thursday and Friday while you weren't here. So in that regard, the afternoon classes, they're in person like they are, would have been, whether it was a normal year or not. Instead of going to BOCES on Mondays and Tuesdays, they go and learn remotely, catch up on some stuff they did while they missed. And then you flip that, of course, depending on your BOCES schedule. So it's a bit of a management hurdle. We got to track who's where. I've been asked by parents, if my kid doesn't want to go here, doesn't want to go to the library, can they sign on and go home? We're working on that. I think the answer is yes. Here I am adjusting my mask. I told you it would be uncomfortable in that second. So we think we can work with parents if the student and the grades are all caught up and they're doing things the right way and they don't feel like they need to be in this learning lab, they want to go home and have that online experience, we can work with families to make that happen. And that's kind of what I just described. The bus drop-off here, I'll start with the bus drop-off. I'll transition to parent drop-off, student drivers. But what we wanted to find a way to do is just to thin the herd out a little bit. So we're going to invite breakfast eaters to come in first. They're going to line up to go to the cafeteria. They can stay in the cafeteria and eat. We don't think we can hold them all in there, though. So high school students will be invited to go to their first period class with their breakfast. Middle school students will stay in there. The rest of the buildings are going to come in by grade level. 6, 8, 10, 12 are going to come in at about 7:20. Grades 7, 9, 11 are going to come in a couple minutes later when the coast is clear. And I have some visuals here that will show you where they come in. Again, this is for bus stop off only. So by letting them off staggered, by bringing them indoors that are staggered, we think it's going to, they'll have masks on, we think that'll thin the herd in a way that's acceptable. If I'm wrong, we'll adjust it. And for students that drive or are dropped off, this thick arrow that you see here pointing to the front circle, that's where they typically come in. We're going to leave that as is. If we get a bottleneck, and we might, we'll open up another door. It's down, labeled here next to Mr. Schlagenoff's room is where it is. It's a possible addition if we need it. And then breakfast. I didn't mention this earlier. They're going to use these cards. We're trying to limit the students typing in their student ID. We want them to come through. We want it to be swift. So these cards are going to allow those transactions to happen a little quickly and with a little less contact that might spread germs. And then social distancing. We are going to try and promote in the hallways things that keep kids apart 6 feet. You know, on this side of the hallway, we'll move in this direction. On this side of the hallway, we'll move in the other direction. So this kind of signage will be everywhere. And then the classrooms have been set up accordingly. So we spent some time this summer, a considerable amount of time, making sure that every single class was under a particular limit. We looked at the rooms, we measured square feet, and we got desks 6 feet apart, and then we set a number. Some rooms it's as low as 15. The task was to get every single class in that teacher's sections under the number. This is one of our larger sections, we can actually fit 25 in there. So then we went through the master schedule, moved kids around, and we have a list of how many classes were over. There was 20 classes we simply couldn't get under. So what we did is we broke those into 2 sections, moved a teacher to teach the additional section. We moved classes to bigger locations. And right now we have no classes that are over the maximum limit. We've gotten them all under. And we're also going to invite classes to go outside. It's just an invitation. We won't mandate it, but we're going to tell teachers, if it's nice out there, and you can do it, and if your lesson affords you the opportunity to go outside with your kids, and it's a healthier place to be. And in some classes, I know there'll be a few where for whatever reason, they can't take their mask off. We'll have signs like this, so they'll know. And then the passing times. This is one that, me personally, I was stuck. How can we get, there's a lot of kids in these hallways. They're shoulder to shoulder in between classes. Not a lot of options here. We're going to release them a couple minutes early, half of them on time, and then the 6th graders, because they transition less, they'll kind of look out in the hallways and peek when the coast is clear, then they'll go. There are going to be times, though, when one group is waiting to get in the class and one group's waiting to get out, where they're going to be in close contact with one another. That's why the masks are key when you're standing up. If this plan needs adjustment, we'll adjust it. And then in lunches, I talked about sacrifices. The kids love lunch. It's a break from all the stuff they have to do during the day. They get to sit with their friends and be themselves. Well, this is going to be different, and I think it's going to take some getting used to. Now they're 6 feet apart. Their desks are in rows. It's a less intimate setting. It's a little more sterile. Quite frankly, it's a little more boring. It's one of the sacrifices we're going to ask them to make. And then 6th graders, the plan now is to have them eat in the classroom. If we do that, we're under the number we need to in all of the cafeterias. So we think we can make that work. I put an aide in there with those students. They'll have 20 minutes to eat. And then it would have become a 20-minute study hall. We're working on transitioning that into some sort of recess of sorts. And then the specials, more sacrifices. Band and chorus won't be meeting the way they always have. They'll be in this room, because it's our biggest room. But they won't have a whole group ensemble up on stage singing together, playing together. And the teacher will pull small groups. The rest of them will have a makeshift stay home. And until it's their turn. In the event that we go back to normal and we can have concerts, great. We'll meet and they'll practice and they'll put on a show like they always do. But until then, band and chorus took a hit. Phys ed took a hit. They're not changing, they're not using locker rooms. They're 12 feet apart, which really limits the things they can do. But that's the sacrifice. And then we think art can be relatively normal, they're going to not share supplies as much as they always do. Some of the pictures just to show the phys ed squares that were literally, we just taped them on the floor to see what we were looking at, how many kids we could get in there. And then after school and extracurricular, the plan is to run those. If we need to readjust that, we'll readjust it, but we want these clubs and kids to participate with all of the same social distancing guidelines that are in place during the day. They'll be in place after school. We're going to ask them to leave the building by 4 o'clock at the latest. And we'll have a bus that actually goes home at 3:30 and we'll communicate with Mr. Lux about who's on that bus. I feel like I'm missing a million things. Our plans are posted on the website. I'd be happy to field any questions of things I didn't mention here. If you have those now, you can raise your hand and I'll address them, or you can send them to me and we'll get answers to you one way or the other. Yes?
I do have a question. This pertains to the middle school as well. If we have children in both schools and they attend, and we feel like down the road that it's not working out for them, they just are not
Thank you.
caring for it, do we have the option to then?
I'm so glad that you asked that. I felt that I was missing something. That's a big one. So we cannot accommodate students who are going to tell us on August 31st, we're going to learn remotely. And that's another thing I didn't mention. We would like to hear from parents who want to learn remotely by August 31st. That's our open school day. We'll put you on a list and we'll plan accordingly. We cannot accommodate those families jumping back into in-person instruction on a whim or on a moment's notice. It's difficult to plan that and manage that. We're going to ask them to commit for the 10-week marking period. However, if you're in person and it's not working, I do think it's an easier transition to go remote. The short answer to your question is yes. If it's not working after a week, a day, a couple weeks, we can transition you to remote learning on a moment's notice. It's coming the other way. We got to make sure class sizes are set. So that one is a yes. We're also, and this is flexible as well. Just as I'm saying, we're going to ask parents to commit to a 10-week window. If they're remote learners and stay there, if it isn't working, of course, we'll do everything in our power to bring them back. We don't want to leave anyone high and dry. And what we're going to do to remote learners is we're going to touch base with them first thing in the morning every day. There'll be a form they have to submit. Someone will process that form. It asks them what they need help in, where they're struggling, do they need to touch base with their counselor. And we'll have someone who processes those every day. It's attendance. We'll count them in attendance, but we'll also get them the support they need. And then we'll check in with those remote learners again during office hours, which is about 1:15. Very good question. Thank you for asking that. Anything else? Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, the drop-off time, pickup time for parents to high school is the same as grade school, you didn't have some time?
No, I'll back up just to reiterate those. The times are here, and they're different. So 7:18 roughly starts.
The buses will arrive here. The buses will arrive at 7:18. We will not open our doors to those who drive or those who are dropped off until 7:20.
So parents in the circle at 7:20?
So the front circle, that's where they would drop off. At 7:20, feel free to drop them off.
Pick up?
And then pick up, so the doors will, school will end at 2:45. That's when our buses will load. And if you pick it up, you can pick up at 2:45 as well. And that's in the front.
High school kids leaving early, is it the same if you want for kids and
If they leave early because they have a note of some kind,
yes.
so a doctor's appointment, so that process will be relatively similar to what has been in the past. They'll show us a note early in the day, we'll process that, we usually verify those notes, and then they leave like they would on any other year. Anything else? Okay, well, I appreciate your coming today and listening to what we have to say. It's not the end of the presentation. If anything pops into your head and you have questions, please reach out. We're here for you. I'll turn it over to Mrs. Backey. She's a coordinator of special ed services. She'll go through some of the special ed protocols.
Good morning, everybody. So I think the most important thing for everyone to know here is if you have a student that has, whether it's a 504 plan or an IEP, they will continue to receive those services that were recommended at their meeting. And something important to know for all of our students actually that are in special ed, if we ever get to the point where we do have to go hybrid, we will continue to still offer special ed services at the school in person, which is really important for some of our students that have a lot of needs. Mr. Christmas talked a little bit about face shields earlier. We do have some students that have some medical needs that would restrict them from wearing a face mask. So those students will have a doctor's note and would be allowed to wear a face shield, as well as for any of the students that are in a speech session, it would be really important for our speech therapists to be able to see your students' mouth as they're working through their therapies. Like I just said, those families that want remote learning, they will continue to receive their services. It will look a little bit different. They will get teletherapy similar to what we saw before school closed, but we'd like to improve on those therapies and make sure that we're able to offer more times so that the students aren't getting behind in their therapies. If you have a student that is doing remote learning, but you would like them to continue to come to the school for, say, something like physical therapy, that's something that we can meet in this class if you wanted them to come in. It's a little bit easier to do physical therapy, obviously, in person than it is through teletherapy. We're working as a special ed team, all of our teachers and therapists, related service providers, to continue to work towards meeting all of your students' IEP goals. That's, first and foremost, our most important thing is that we're making progress towards their goals. We do have a handful of students that do go to other placements. They are OA, they live in our districts, but they have special needs. I've been working with Mr. Luxon, and those students will continue to go to those different placements. We just have to follow those placements schedules and what they're doing. Some are doing remote learning, some are doing hybrid, so we've just been working with that, so they will continue to get their services at their other placements. This year, in order to limit the number of visitors and outsiders coming into the building, we will continue to do our CSD and 504 meetings virtually. If you don't want to do it virtually, you also will have the opportunity to do that through teleconference. And between me and Mrs. Cass, we will get in touch with you and make sure that you're all set up for those. We did a lot of student invitations, so parents are allowed to use the student Chromebooks as well so that they can attend those meetings virtually. We will also continue to take referrals for students, so if a parent has a referral for their child, if they're concerned that they may have some academic concerns, we'll still continue to do evaluations. Teachers can also still refer students, so we want to keep continuing to offer evaluations as well as for the 3-year CSE reviews. Do I have any questions about special ed? Yeah.
Eric will be working like in the afternoons, you don't have to go to school in the morning. Where would he, because I take him to work and pick him up, so how would that work for him?
Who do you mean, for coming to school?
When
Or?
he's done in the morning and I pick him up, how would I pick him up from school to take him to work?
So very similar to what Mr. Peterson said, you would go to Deb's office and you would pick him up there.
And what about medications instead of driving to school?
I'm sorry.
Medications that they take to go to school?
Medications will still have the same protocol that they have in the past. You can continue to work with Kathy, and she can give you any specifics on medications. If you needed to bring those into the school, she can even meet you, at Deb's office and pick up that medication for you so that she can go and lock it up in her office. For the most part, they'll be in the same, they are doing a little bit of movement this year, just based on who's teaching what class. So you will see a little bit of movement.
If my son gets speech therapy, should I invest in a face shield for him for just that purpose?
The school will be, providing face shields for speech students. So that's something you don't have to worry about. Anybody else have any questions? No, I thank you, those of you that do have students with special needs, I thank you for your willingness to have our virtual meetings back in the spring. They actually went really, really well. So we had, a couple technical difficulties here and there, but I think overall we were able to successfully have those meetings. I appreciate it. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call at any time and we can work through. Some people have individual situations, so we can talk about that if you have any other questions.
Thank you. Mary, our food manager, is not here this morning, so I'll quickly just run through some of the protocols that we've already mentioned. Again, at the elementary school, breakfast will be in the classroom. In both buildings, we'll have a barcode scanner, so the children aren't sharing a keypad and putting in their PIN numbers. Obviously, we're reducing the capacity, separate lines. Obviously, when students are in the cafeteria and when they leave the cohorts, we have increased disinfecting of the tables and chairs. And again, we will not be taking payment at breakfast. So it's really important that maybe if you want to send in checks and put money on accounts, we really don't want the physical money transaction with the employees and the children. So just think about that as the school year starts. And really the same thing for the middle high school. Just increase staff disinfecting when the cohorts are in there. As Mr. Peterson mentioned, this is not the greatest way to feed our kids, but unfortunately all of the buffet lines, all of the grabbing that the kids can with all of the different choices per the guidance has to end. So all the food will be in to-go type containers. We're going to pre-wrap all of the plastic silverware. And once the kids are in the cafeteria and they're at their desks and they're eating, we're really going to discourage them from getting up and walking around. It just can't happen because obviously they have their masks off to eat. So we will place garbage cans around the area to limit their movement. And really, they're going to sit there and wait till lunch is over before they dispose of their garbage. And unfortunately, the vending machines that are in the hallway, the FFA vending machines, some of the water vending machines, and the milk vending machines are not going to be available. Jordan's not here, so I'll go through some of the cleaning and disinfecting, which I'm sure is on the forefront of everybody's mind. We are, I don't know if you could smell it as you were walking in here. Jordan and his crew have been and will be unbelievable because that is the top priority of this district, is to make sure that this place is clean. It's clean on a daily basis. We just have to amp it up about tenfold. So obviously we have an additional cleaner each and every day in both buildings. So we've increased our staffing during the day. They will be disinfecting the frequently touched objects, the doorknobs, even in the hallways, the bathrooms. That's what the focus is going to be on. We have increased the air changes. Before we would tell the teachers don't open your windows, don't prop your doors open. Those used to be security issues. Now it's just the opposite. We want the windows open. We want you to prop your doors open. We actually want this building to circulate the air. We also want wind tunnels because air circulation is key in making sure that that this place is sanitary. Again, increasing all the restrooms, the cafeterias. We're going to target hot spots with electrostatic disinfection. So our buildings and grounds crew have machines that actually physically, positively charge some of the disinfection so it sticks on the non-porous surfaces. to disinfect. So we've really, amped up our cleaning and disinfection. The night shift, really not much is going to change. We had mentioned that we're really going to kind of close this campus after the elementary dismissal at 4 o'clock. We are not opening up our campus to outside organizations to use our facilities. We are not opening up this auditorium to outside organizations. This campus is really going to be closed after 4 p.m. That allows our night crew to really do a lot of disinfection, a lot of cleaning to get ready for the morning. We did mention something about sports. We're waiting to see, I guess the governor's going to come out next week with guidance on sports. If that happens, we'll certainly follow that guidance. But really, all in all, at 4 o'clock, this campus will be deserted, so the night crew can obviously disinfect the buildings. We're going to make sure that there's an adequate supply of soap and paper towels and microfiber cloths, hand sanitizer and disinfectants, so the kids can use it. We're going to ask kids before and after leaving a classroom to hand sanitize their hands. So we have a lot of protocols and things in places. We have changed all our air filtration system filters. We cannot use the MERV 13s, which was required by the malls to open up, but we are above what the baseline is. The MERV 13s are such a fine filter, and first of all, they don't catch the COVID. But with our filtration system, we would not be able to circulate the air as forceful if we had those types of filters. But we are above what the guidance states. I believe we're using a MERV 7 or a MERV 8, and I think the baseline is a MERV 3. But again, we are going to bring in a lot of outside air each and every day. So we do have air conditioning, but unfortunately, again, we're going to be bringing in a lot of outside air. So the school may feel actually a little warmer when we open up because we're circulating that air. Again, next week, the governor's going to come out with guidance for fall sports. Currently, right now, there's about 6 or 7 different plans. They talked about having a shortened sports season. They also talked about taking spring sports, which would be your baseball, softball, and putting those now into the fall, those low-impact sports. So the football and the soccer, which are considered high impact, might be in the spring. That's just one of the plans. We are anxiously waiting to see what the governor says in regards to sports. But obviously we'll follow that guidance once it comes out. We want to make sure that with all of these protocols and guidelines that we want to get back to normal. We want this to be healthy but humane, if that's a slogan that the administrative team has used. We want to make sure that the kids are healthy, that we can be open and stay open, but we also want to make this humane. I don't want kids to go home after a week and say, I don't want to go back, because it will look different. There are sacrifices, but there's also a human factor to it. So again, I do hope sports comes back because a lot of our kids attend school for those types of activities. Also, our extracurricular clubs and activities will resume on a limited basis. We want to run those clubs. Obviously, abiding by all the social distancing and all the guidelines, but we want to make sure that the kids have access to those clubs. So again, at the middle and high school and at the elementary, we'll make sure that clubs occur on certain days, so there isn't 4 or 5 clubs here at school, here at the high school, where we have now 100 kids trying to get on 2 buses. We don't want to do that. So on our end, we'll make sure that the clubs resume. So non-negotiables. Mr. Peterson mentioned that we are not going to police kids. I do not want to have our suspension rates through the ceiling because we have a handful of kids that walk in here and when we remind them to put their mask on, or a teacher says, hey, don't forget to put your mask on, we get defiance. We get the, I'm not wearing it. If that's the response, you can't come here. And I have the authority to make sure that if they don't abide by the guidelines, that you've made the decision now to learn from home. I am not going to be suspending kids, and our building principals aren't going to be suspending kids for 5 days and have them come back the 6th day and suspend. We're not going to play that game. We're in a different environment. This is a different world. So there's really some non-negotiables, and we'll tell this and explain this to the students when they come in. But the non-negotiables here, all must mask on the bus. You must mask when you're standing on campus, in school, and there's going to be designated classrooms and areas. So, bus drivers, we've told them that, yes, we will have a supply of masks, but we will not pick up kids that don't have a mask. And again, I say that because we want to make sure that the kids have a mask. The district has a supply of masks. We will supply kids that don't have one. But if someone's going to get on the bus and say they're not wearing a mask, guess what? We're not giving them a ride. Can't have that. We also can't have kids during transportation, and we will have additional bus monitors on the buses sit in the back and think this is a joke and take their masks off, and we're not policing that. We don't have to give kids ride to school. That's a privilege. It isn't a right. And if we have an issue, you're not going to be transported to school. Obviously, we're going to promote the hand washing, the hand sanitizing. One of the things that I want to talk about are the temperature checks at home. You will get a push notification, and we will actually practice this with you that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday after Labor Day. So we'll have 3 days of practice before the kids come in here on Friday. You will receive a push notification through our Parent Square app for each of your children. And what you need to do is answer a series of questions. You know, the COVID-19 related questions. Have you been out of state? Have you come in contact? And then there's going to be a list of symptoms. Does your child have a fever, a cough, a muscle soreness? All of those types of things. And then at the bottom, it'll say your child's temperature, and you will physically have to put in what your child's temperature is and submit. That is what most of the districts are doing in the area. And then we receive that information on our end. So we will know the families that do submit it and the families that don't. What's real important is we also receive an alert that if you happen to answer yes to any of those questions, on your end, you will receive an alert that says, do not send your child to school, contact your primary care physician immediately. On our end, we will get an alert that says, this child is symptomatic. Number one, we'll make sure that they're not in school, and that's the big thing, and there's something I need to discuss with you in about a minute when I'm done here. But then, if we have families that don't do this, we will get a list of the families that did not submit this. What the districts around here, and you'll receive a letter in the mail, is that really that's your passive agreement that your child is healthy, just like you would send them to school on a normal day. But our nurses will follow up with those kids and make sure that they get their temperature checked before returning to class. So we'll get a list of families that did not submit that information, and we'll follow up with the children when they get here. So it's really, the community is going to really need to help us in making sure to fill out those forms each and every day. Honestly, it takes about 5 seconds. Because if your child is healthy, all you got to do is click no for all answers and then put in their temperature. One of the questions that came up was, is the district going to provide thermometers for all the families? We can't. However, there's an outside community group that is going to donate some thermometers to us. So I would ask that maybe in the next couple of weeks, if you can't get a hold of a thermometer, please contact us and we'll try to get you one. But unfortunately, like Band-Aids, it's something that all families should have. And we're going to ask you to, again, take your child's temperature before sending them to school. Okay, off the record. Guidance came out last week, which changes daily, regarding symptoms. I had to explain this to the employees too. Because all of our teachers, all of our staff will have to fill out this form as well. If you indicate at any time that your child has a sore throat or they have muscle soreness, and you submit it to us, I mentioned that we get an alert that your child is, that you have screened your child symptomatic. They cannot return to school until they have a negative COVID test. I will tell you right now, in this region, it is very difficult to get a COVID test. So I guess what I'm saying is there needs to be a healthy balance with, certainly if your child is sick, keep them at home. I had muscle soreness on Monday morning because I worked out on Sunday. I also get a runny nose and I have a dry cough because I have allergies. I'm not going to mark yes. So I can't tell you that you shouldn't, but I think you just need to be very careful in doing that. The other flexible part of this is that if you're not going to send your child to school, or the employee isn't going to come to school, then honestly we don't need the form to be filled out. So I just want you to understand the ramifications that if you positively screen your child for one of those symptoms, they cannot return to school until they have a negative COVID test. That could be weeks. So again, I would just, I don't want to say that you shouldn't do it. I can't. I don't have the authority to say that. But just be very careful. If your child is one that does get frequent headaches, and they wake up some morning and say they have a headache, you see what I'm saying? I need for you to be very, very careful with that. Because then again, if you click they have a headache and you submit that to us, we now have it documented that your child's symptomatic and they cannot return to school until they get a negative COVID test. I know doctors, you know, you may call your doctor and the doctor say, well, sure, yeah, I can see your child next week. I know that there are a lot of places that won't give you a COVID test without a doctor's note. But I also know doctors are very careful in prescribing one based on, you know, the symptoms. So I would just be very careful. I am hopeful in the next month or so it's very easy to get a test, but I just want to make sure that you understand what those ramifications are. So again, you know, if your child has a headache and you submit that, and then the next day they're fine, you can't send them to school. So just be careful in monitoring your child. We certainly don't want you not to mark those symptoms if it really is abnormal and really is bad. But again, just be careful with that. The guidance before that came out was, okay, if you're symptomatic and now all of a sudden you're okay, you know, you could, through communication and the doctor's note saying, oh, it's just an ear infection, that's why you had a headache, you can go back to school. Not anymore. It also needs to have a negative COVID test. So, questions? They're all over the place. Yes?
So what about those kids at school that are just whiners?
Yes. So, our nurses need to be trained. So obviously, if a child is here in school and they go down to the nurse because they don't feel well, now, part of the training for our staff and our teachers, they have to go through a course on how to identify kids that don't look well. So talk about the training and all this. It's crazy. But if a kid says, yeah, I don't feel well, I got a stomach ache, whatever, they're going to go down to the nurses. Our nurses will be trained. They're very good. First of all, they will check for a fever. That's the first thing that they will do is check for a fever. If they have a fever, they have to go. But if they're okay, they're just complaining, oh, I just have a headache, you know, whatever, Our nurses, just because a kid goes down, does not mean that they're going to be positively screened. They may sit there for a while, but the nurse, just because a kid walks in and says, I don't feel well, isn't going to send them home. That being said, if the nurse says, wow, you know, you have a fever and you don't look good and you're coughing and all of that, we are positively screening that child. We do have an isolation room that we need to separate them. We will call and have that child picked up immediately. That child cannot return until they have a negative COVID test because we have screened them positively for COVID. Now, on that note, we are not testing kids. The governor threw that out there a couple weeks ago. We don't have the capacity, nor do we have the authority to test kids. It's called screening, and that's just checking fevers and, you know, checking symptoms. But we will not swab your kid, and we don't do that. If we send a child home, we will tell you, please go get a test, call your primary care physician under their direction, and your child can't return until they have a negative COVID test. Here's the kicker. If they have siblings, they're gone too. It's the immediate family. So if you have 4 or 5 kids in the district, and one comes down to the nurse's office and we say, yeah, this isn't good, you gotta go, we gotta grab your other 4 kids. And all of them can't return until you have a negative COVID test. This is gonna be fun. I'm just...
And they can remote learn during that time, right?
Correct.
They'll be able to remote learn?
Yes, and then again, yes, we would put them on remote one because it could be weeks. So yes, so when Mr. Peterson and Mrs. Gaylor talk about we have to make sure that our teachers can do that, that's what we're working on, and we believe we can make that happen. That's it.
My question is, what if one of the kids comes home sick, ends up with strep throat? All the kids are still gonna get home and have to have a COVID test? Like, if I take a kid to the doctor's, he's got
Okay.
strep.
If you know that, and you're going to keep them at home, I would tell you not to fill out the form. Because we don't need that
Like,
form.
if you take them to the doctors and they say, well, they don't have COVID, they have strep, they still need to get.
Yes,
the test.
yes. So great question. If your child has a sore throat and we send him home and you go to the doctor the next day and he's like, it isn't COVID, it's strep throat. Okay, your kid can return to school? Nope. 2 weeks ago, the answer would be yes. As of last week's guidance, no.
So will the doctor prescribe a COVID test?
You would have to ask him that and say, I can't return to school. My son or daughter can't return to school until they have a negative COVID test. Can you write me one? So,
And everybody else.
yes.
That's what scares me with the little school is only because, like, I have one in the little school and the sickness is, like, they're crazy germs. So, my question is, it's either homeschooling or full on day, correct? Because here's my question, if for some reason he gets a toothache at school, gets sent, now he's gotta have a COVID test, okay, say that comes back negative 5 to 10 days later, he's out. Then the following week he gets an ear infection, that's another 5 to 10 days out. For me to keep going through that, I think that I would just rather after the first or second time, no offense, just keep him home, I don't wanna put my
Right.
child.
But I guess my question is, if they have a toothache or an earache, you're going to send your child to school, and I'm assuming, and obviously you're going to send him symptom-free.
Correct. But
If he doesn't feel well during the day and he's going to go down to the nurse is going to call you. It's not all of a sudden that, if we really have concerns that we are now going to say, you are checking for symptom, we're going to call you. If you say, oh, look at, no, he's got a toothache, this and this and that, we're going to have those conversations with you. Because, again, once we pull that trigger, it's a nightmare. So we're going to have those conversations. I can see kids coming down saying, I have a headache, I don't feel well. Oh, you have a headache, you don't feel well? Get out of here. Our nurses aren't going to do that. they'll call, and if you say, well, yeah, they have a headache because they were up till 4 o'clock last night, and you know what I mean. So there's going to be a little bit of again, a balance to all of that, just because we know what the ramifications are. But again, we don't want your child here if they're sick. But you know, if you are wanting to wait 24 hours to see if the symptoms go away, you know, those types of things, I can't tell you yes or no to do that because I'm being recorded. But just, again, just some common sense, you know your kids. You know, the fall flu season's gonna hit. Again, kids are just gonna get a runny nose because they have a cold. That's not COVID. So you just really want to monitor your kids day in and day out, ask how they're feeling, and you know, go from there. So
And so we would not fill out that form in the morning if we were not sending them, correct?
yes,
Okay, so then what if he does get an ear infection and he's out for a couple days, either the school or the health department knocking on my door, would that go?
no, I would have you call the nurse and just say, hey, you know, I'm not sending, you know, Johnny to school. He's got an ear infection. We're just waiting for that to go. The biggest thing is the documentation piece. And I'm going to say this again to our employees. The reason for that documentation is you're here on campus in these buildings, and we need to account for everybody, more so for that contact, you know, tracing. But if you're just going to not send your child, and it doesn't even have to be sick, maybe they just have a wellness checkup and a couple doctor's appointments. We don't need that form from you for that day if they're not going to be here. So I said the same thing to the teachers and our employees. If you're not just going to be here because you're just taking a leave day because you have a couple doctor's appointments or something, I don't need that form from you. But again, you know, if an employee says, you know, geez, I don't feel well, I'm not coming to work, I would say, all right, well, you don't have to fill out the form, but if you do, you know, what are you going to mark?
Can I interject quickly?
Yes.
Over the last fall, like October, November, when we were really being hit hard with the flu, we do know there were some families in the area that had tested positive for the antibodies. So we've already seen some of these cases. I work really closely with Susie, our elementary nurse. She is phenomenal. She's so thorough with her evaluations and her investigations that she has a really good understanding of those kids that maybe are the ones that say, I just don't feel good today, they're like the chronic visitors. She can sniff out that information faster than anybody. She's also not afraid to call home and talk to a parent to say, like, what's honestly going on? Did you give your child Tylenol today? Are they eating? Are they drinking their fluids? So she's never going to immediately jump to, oh, it has to be COVID. She's really going to be thorough, and if, you know, she will err on the side of caution because we don't want sick kids here, but we also understand elementary students come with a variety of germs. We share everything. Now, I do have hope that our extra cleaning that we're doing, the additional staff that we have throughout the day to use the Clorox machine when kids aren't in the room, and the masks that we will be wearing, I think it will reduce some of those illnesses that we've seen in the past. It's not going to eliminate all of them, but I do think it's going to be a much healthier environment than we saw last fall. And I know that this part is really scary. I'm a mom. My son's over here this year. I literally said to Mr. Fiscus, if Jake goes home, I'm going to be quarantined. What are we doing with the building? You know, we have legit fears. And that's why we're saying, please be cautious with the information you're sharing and when. You know, we also have been real flexible with our attendance policies. We're not going to immediately call in educational neglect to say, this kid hasn't been here in 3 weeks. Once we get to our hybrid part and our remote learning part, you'll see how seamless that transition will be, so that kids are not going to be behind, and we're not going to penalize them for missed work or late work. Okay? I hope that kind of alleviates some of your fears and concerns.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh.
Sorry. If you have a kid who has like a GI issue, so he complains of stomachache often, would it be helpful to have a note from the doctor?
Yes, absolutely. If there's some, you know, preconditioning If there's pre-existing conditions, it'd be great to have a doctor's note and the nurse have it on file. At the very least, call the nurse of the building and say, hey, look, I just kind of want to give you a head, so they can make it known. So if a kid comes down and says, I don't feel well, you know, we pull those files. And the nurses are so good that they know the kids, as Mrs. Gaylor said. So again, we're going to do our due diligence to go through what we need to, as far as if a kid comes down and doesn't feel well, you know, in regards to if we have to positively screen somebody, knowing what has to happen, we will make sure we communicate and make sure that it's, you know, for the most part, you know, a concrete, you know, I don't want to say diagnosis, but a concrete screening. Yes, sir.
Well, I understand what you're saying, that we as a parent just be aware of why your kid is sick and going to be aware and not feel like it is attributed to something. If it's something else on there, say diarrhea, and it's on the list, kid has it, what you're saying, if you know why they have diarrhea, it's a lot, but if you don't know why, you're on a different territory.
Absolutely.
So then let's say we keep them home, but we don't tell you, but when the kid comes to school the next day, you want an excuse as to why they were out, what do you want the parents to say?
We also have to be understanding, you know, like you said, and the question was if you know, a child has one of those symptoms, you know, diarrhea, whatever, and you don't send them to school, so we don't need that form. It goes away, you know, in 24 hours, and now you're going to send that child back to school. We are going to want to know. What that does is it puts us on alert to keep our eyes, ears on your child for the next few days. Again, we don't want to create a Trojan horse where all of a sudden now we're not marking these things, and then all of a sudden we have a wide case spread of it. So I'm just trying to give you an idea of what we're going to be dealing with come the fall when those forms come out and what you're checking. We just have to be very intelligent, have some common sense, and do things right. I am not at all saying don't mark the symptom. I don't want to be on record saying that. Again, I'm just giving you the idea of what is going to have to happen once a child is screened positively. So,
Mr. Fiskus, can I just add on to that?
Yes.
So what we'll ask for in any year, if a student is absent from school because they don't feel well, we'll take a note that says, Johnny wasn't feeling well yesterday, which is why he was at, that's good enough at our end.
My question is, what if a kid gets sent home and is tested positive? What is the plan in place for that?
Yes.
Say if they're in a classroom with a whole bunch of kids, that you've got one kid tested positive, what is the plan?
great question. So let's say we do send somebody home, they go get a test, and they're positive. The Department of Health, on their end, from whatever lab, from whatever test, from whatever doctor, when those results come back positive, the Department of Health here in Genesee County is immediately alerted. If they know that it's a child or even an employee, they'll figure out who that child is, who the family is. If that child or employee goes here, we will get notified. We then step back and we assist the local Department of Health with their investigation. I will tell you at a minimum that whether it's building or it's the whole district, we will be shut down for 24 hours at a minimum.
For one
But
positive?
for a positive case. We abide by what the Department of Health, and you can, go on our website, and part of our reopening plan is what we do, but, in a nutshell, we follow their investigation. So if it's a child at the elementary, you as a parent, their contact tracing investigation is involved, so they'll ask us, okay, it was a second grader. Where was that second grader yesterday or the day before? Oh, they're in this class. What were they doing? So on the back end, they will notify all the families of those kids in there. Does that mean that you have to quarantine? No. Does that mean we have to shut down the middle high school building? No. Every case is different depending on who it is and where they are and all of that. But we honestly just kind of step back and let the Department of Health do their investigation. What they said publicly is that if it is a teacher or an employee, they will mention it that it's the district. If it's a student, they'll just mention the building. Obviously, there's privacy acts and confidentiality that we have to abide by, and so does the local Department of Health. But when they come in, we have to give them the information of, yes, this child is a 7th grader, and this is their schedule, and this is where they've been. So it's
Automatically kick into remote learning if it's that 20.
that, yes, that child would automatically kick into remote learning because they do have to quarantine. They have to get 2 negative COVID tests within 48 hours, and there's a whole bunch of safeguards before that child or employee returns. So yes, and that's why we need to be prepared for both. Somebody did say, well, what if you're shut down? That's going to have to come from a higher authority. And if we are, that's why we can immediately transition into a remote. We may have to go hybrid at some times because maybe the governor says, okay, you got to reduce your capacity 50%, and we'll talk about what our hybrid model looks like. So we plan for that. But again, that's going to be a case-by-case basis. But obviously, if we do get a positive test result, the local Department of Health takes over. And we've had many, many conversations with Paul Pettit. He's fantastic. Again, we're abiding by their guidelines and what their protocols are. Yes, sir.
Okay, elementary school question. Say a kid gets put in the COVID protocol, lack of a better term. Is remote learning at any grade level there an immediate available option?
The only area that it will be limited is for UPK. We do not have one-to-one Chromebooks for our UPK students. From kindergarten up, we do. But they're 3 and 4 to start the school year, so asking them to sit behind a computer is virtually impossible unless it's a fun game. And we don't want them on that much screen time. We still have to listen to some of the other guidance and other best practices, even though we're still adapting to the COVID restrictions. So the UPK will be different, but for kindergarten up, it will be a remote experience.
And just a couple other things. Mrs. Backey talked about students. We do need medical documentation. If your child cannot wear a face mask, we will certainly provide the accommodation that they wear, a face shield. Saying that my child won't wear their face mask because it's uncomfortable is not an excuse. Obviously, we're providing mask breaks for them. They must wear a mask. Kids that walk in here that we don't have documentation from that are wearing a face shields do not replace face masks. I know at times that was confusing when they talked about face coverings, but they have to wear a face mask. And certainly if there's underlying issues, we will provide those accommodations. So I'm going to turn this over now to Mrs. Rockow. She is our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, and she's going to quickly go through the ins and outs of our hybrid learning plan and what a remote learning plan is going to look like if and when we have to transition into those.
Hello, everybody. So, like Mr. Fiskus mentioned, we're coming back in full. We have a remote plan that will be happening continually because, like Mr. Peterson said, we do have some students who will start the year remote. But what about that vast body of kids if we have to go in between, if we get asked to reduce capacity? That's when this hybrid learning plan kicks in. So all building protocols and procedures that we just went through, all those would remain in place for when students are in the building, so none of the masking or social distancing procedures would change. And during all our hybrid models, the expectation still is we're doing 5 days of new instruction. It won't be like the spring. This is going to be a very different experience, and I know Mr. Peterson will talk about that a little bit more when he talks about remote learning. But know that if we go remote, your child still will continue with all their learning experiences. So we have two plans for remote, kind of like a step-down model. The first plan, our elementary school will remain in person 5 days a week. Mrs. Gaylor was able to, just with the custodians, move some classrooms around, and that building already is under 50% capacity, even with our students socially distanced. So Plan 1 remote, those kids are still in person 5 days a week. Our special ed and high need students, like Mrs. Backey said, they will still be in person 5 days a week. So that piece won't change. The part that's going to change is in the middle high school. If we have to switch to a remote model, we're going to go to 2 days in person, and we're going to break it up into cohorts. So cohort A will be students with the last name A through M, and any student in BOCES. Because if you remember, Mr. Peterson talked about BOCES kids having a little bit of a different schedule. I'll explain that in a second. So cohort A will be in person at Oakfield on Monday and Tuesday. They will learn remotely Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If I'm a BOCES student, I will be in person at Oakfield on Monday and Tuesdays. I will have remote learning both for Oakfield and BOCES on Wednesday, and then I'll be in person at BOCES Thursday and Friday. So we wanted to make sure we accommodate those students that we have that go to BOCES, and that's really that reason, that drive they have to come to us every day. So they'll be in that cohort. The end of the alphabet, last names N through Z, they'll be in person Thursday and Friday, and they'll do remote Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So that leaves us Wednesday with a near empty building. Now, for families that have blended last names, you may have a last name Peterson and a last name, Abrams. We're not going to say, oh, well, half the kids have to come on Monday, Tuesday, the other half Tuesday, Thursday. If you're in that type of situation, either we already know about it or somehow we've missed, just let us know, and we'll make sure that your kids can come on the same days. The remote instruction that is happening, again, when Mr. Peterson and Mrs. Geller talk about what that looks like, you'll have a better idea of what your student would be doing while they're home. So that's Plan 1. Elementary school, special ed, high needs, 5 days a week. It's just middle high school that we go down into this cohort model. If we get the notice from up top that, okay, you got to kick it down a notch again, then we go to Plan 2. And Plan 2 is almost identical, except our elementary students will now switch to that 2 days in person with 3 days at home. Our special ed and high needs students, they'll still have the option of coming here 5 days a week. Again, that's going to be at a family's discretion. If at any point they're not comfortable with that, you work with Mrs. Backey and the teachers, and we will provide remote instruction for those students as well. But we are accommodating to still have them in the building if we go into this situation. Now, what happens on Wednesdays? So on Wednesdays for our elementary kids, the learning expectations are going to be a little bit different. They're going to be crafted so all the remote instruction is going to be non-tech based. So teachers are going to plan activities for them to do. It might be something that's project based, social emotional, maybe there's a family learning activity that they can do. Teachers also, if we have to go to this remote or to this hybrid model, teachers on Wednesdays for elementary will put Google Meets together. So my Monday, Tuesday kids have an opportunity to interact with my Thursday, Friday kids. So Wednesday, the whole class potentially could come together virtually. So those kids have an opportunity to interact with their peers. In the middle high school, it would look a little bit different. On those days, students are going to be involved in asynchronous learning, which we'll talk about a little bit more. Basically, that means they will ingest. They will have their learning opportunities on the computer. It won't be a live, real person opportunity. And they'll have an opportunity on those days to get one-on-one support or small group support with their teachers if they're finding that they need a little bit more help, and that will be in a virtual environment. To be honest, we're thinking hybrid probably is not going to be something that's going to happen, but for the state, we have all 3 plans in place. We felt we were comfortable with having 2 hybrid models. Again, if we have to tier, we thought that that was something that we can safely do in this district. So I'm going to turn it over next to Mr. Peterson and Mrs. Gaylor, where they talk about the remote learning. And that remote learning, remember, also will occur on the hybrid model, if your students in person Monday, Tuesday, they would have a version of remote learning on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Okay, and she mentioned remote, hybrid. I mean, we only feel like we'll be in hybrid if someone tells us that we have to. As I mentioned before, remote is something we'll be in from day one for some kids. So if we have to go there full-time for all the kids, we think it can be a very seamless transition. These are some of the things that we'll do to make that transition seamless. You know, Google Classroom is something that's going to help teachers store content where remote learners are going to consume it. GoGuardian, with some safety measures in place that are going to protect our kids as they access this material and use the internet. It's also going to facilitate some meets and some interaction with the student and the teacher. I won't read that to you, but it's on the slide. The terms that are being thrown around are synchronous and asynchronous. What I'm really trying to say is that we want to create a system that works for teachers and works for students. If the teacher isn't comfortable with it, it won't work. So there will be moments where students can use the term zoom into the classroom and watch live. But that doesn't work for every teacher in every class. So there will be more frequent moments where students are learning asynchronously, where the content is either recorded and the instruction is recorded, then it's uploaded into Google Classroom and the student accesses it later. That balance will be worked out literally individually with each teacher, communicated to their students. This is just some definitions. I'll leave it on there for information purposes. I won't read those to you, but you can access it later. It's sort of a textbook definition of those terms. It's a checklist that I kind of stole as I saw what others are doing. And the idea is that what we did last spring can't be duplicated. It was survival mode. We did the best we could, and I'll defend what we did, but it wasn't perfect. This fall, we hope to move forward with new learning. We want our students to grow. And the grading will be more consistent with what it has been in the past. Whereas in the spring, honestly, it was very, very difficult to fail a course in the third and fourth marking period. It wasn't impossible. It was very, very difficult. Whereas this fall, if you're not doing the work, to put it bluntly, your child will fail. And we want to support them. We think we can support them, but it won't be tune in when it's going to be, you do a couple of assignments and get by. It'll be, tune in. We're going to ask them to tune in to set the parameters of 7:30 to 2:45. It may not be tuned in live. It's unlikely that they will in every class, but to set that time aside for them. And these check-ins I referenced earlier. I like this. This is a means to support remote learners. We work for you and your children. We want to support them. It's our job to support them. These check-ins will do two things. It will accommodate the fact that they are here. We've loaded them as in attendance. But we'll also be able to track where they need our support and reach out. My slide may have frozen again. This is good.
I think that's the last one.
That's all, yeah.
I went quick through that, but specifically with the remote experience, are there things I haven't mentioned, Mrs. Gaylor, that you'd like to chime in on?
So for the elementary side, we will have a similar checking form, but we use the zones of regulation. So our form will be color-coded to attach to their motions. If you choose to have remote or we're forced into a remote for a sick child, every grade level is working together right now, so all the teachers in kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, and fifth will have the same expectations regardless of what homeroom you're in. And that sheet will be shared out, and it will have three categories: the expectations for our students, the expectations for our parents, and the expectations for our teachers, so that we're all on the same page. The last thing I quickly wanted to clarify, I know one of the things in education, we all have this language that we speak, and sometimes it doesn't make sense to families. I'm hearing a lot of families talk about homeschooling and remote learning, and I just want you to know that if you choose to homeschool, you're removing yourself from our district. You're going to provide the instruction, you're going to provide the assessments,
You're going to provide the technology. You're really not a part of our community at the same level. If you're remote learning, we are still providing the curriculum, we're still providing the instruction, and we're still providing the devices. And I know it's a really minor term switch, but I just wanted to make sure that I've had families call me to say, I'm really interested in homeschooling, and so we're sending them the BOCES packet, but they really are asking about remote learning. So I just wanted to clarify that. I apologize that we have all these different acronyms and different words that sometimes don't fit into your normal vocabulary and your normal conversations. So I just wanted to clarify that quickly for you before you were asking additional questions.
So, for remote learning for UPK, how does that work?
It will not be as virtual as the rest. I have 2 sections. They will have Google Classroom set up so families can go in and see some of the morning slides and do some of the morning activities, the calendar and things. But a lot of it will be more activity-based and suggestions of activities that you can, go through and handwriting practices and things like that. It will be not as in-depth as the classroom experience, obviously, because there's a lot of that interaction and learning how to have that productive conflict with other peers. So that's a part that will be missing with the virtual.
So would it be something that we would have to print off, or would it be something that would be sent home?
There will be digital copies that will be shared with you through the Google Classroom that you could then print and have access to. Yep.
All right, so this is probably only applies to me.
Okay.
Do you have any knowledge or pull with Spectrum, so some of us that don't have access to good internet?
So I can let Mr. Fiskus speak to that. This is something that's new to our buildings.
We're trying. Our Genesee Valley BOCES region is working with the local cable companies in trying to devise a plan. In the meantime, and I'm not sure, I'm hopeful of a plan. The district has purchased these MiFi hotspots to ensure that if we are in the hybrid or the remote learning plans, that we're able to give internet access to our families that need it. So our technology director had sent out a couple technology surveys that the families had filled out. So we have a pretty good idea of the percentage of families, even more specifically the families that do need the hotspots. So we have purchased many of those, and we have them ready to go.
They're no different than what I already have, probably, right, through Verizon?
I don't know. We contracted with Kajit for these hotspots. The technology director would have much more knowledge in what I'm telling you right now of how they work and the broadband and capacity and all that good stuff. You can always email him, but we are prepared to distribute those if and when necessary.
What's his name?
Rob Trozjewski, Rob Z as we call him. He has his email is on the website. And you can easily call him, leave a message. He's on vacation, that's why he's not here, because we really relied on him and he was exhausted. So he took a week off. Hurry back, Rob. So he'll be back in the office next week. But we're set and ready to go. He's fantastic. So, are there any other live questions? I received a couple questions that were submitted beforehand. There were 8 of them. I'm only going to answer the 2 because I do believe in our presentations we did answer them. So there's a question here: when the parents drop off the children off in the bus loop, do they have to drop their child off at the designated hallway like the buses are going to unload? So.
It's going to depend on the congestion of that loop and the size of your child. I will encourage UPK and kindergarten families to park in front of B and C and drop off your students there. The older kids are fine; they can manage walking from whatever side of the parking lot you're at.
And then where is the parent drop-off for the middle high school, and what is the appropriate time for drop-off? So for the middle high school, you won't be near the buses, you'll just pull up front here, and I would say 7:19 and 59 seconds is a great time to drop them off. These doors will open up at 7:20. And the reason I wanted to answer that question is last year when I reported to work at 6 or 6:15 or 6:30, there was always a group of kids here already waiting in the front foyer. They were my breakfast club, that I called them. There's going to be absolutely no entrance into this building until 7:20. So if you're dropping your child off at 7 o'clock and you need to leave, they are outside. So I just want to make the community aware of that. So if it's raining, if it's snowing, if it's bad weather, they have nowhere to go. Here is my concern that Friday when kids come here. The community has been so supportive, and I thank you for supporting our plan. The concern I have is kids are going to be walking, a lot of drop-offs. Parents are helping out, the transportation. They'll be dropping their kids off. I can see 200 kids standing out here at 7:15 and waiting to get into the school. We'll have to monitor that, but that's something that keeps me up at night, is I can see that. One thing that I want to mention is when your child is here on campus, and let's say you drop them off, or they're riding their bike, or they're walking, as soon as they step foot on this campus, they have to put a mask on. So if you drop them off and they're in their car and they get out, they have to put their mask on. Social media is going to be all over the place when we open on Friday. I can almost guarantee you, because we are the only school district in this area that's going back full capacity, that the news crews will be here. The one thing that I can't have is 200 kids out there on that front lawn without masks, and they won't social distance, taking snaps and all this other stuff, because CNN will get a hold of it. We just can't have that. So it's going to be very important for parents and families just to remind your children, if you're dropping them off, wear a mask. But I don't really need kids here at 7 o'clock. So the closest to 7:20, first period doesn't start till 7:35. So there is a window from about 7:20 to 7:35. I would say even closer to 7:30 would be a great time to drop them off. But again, those doors will open at 7:20. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Just one as an observation. We talked about physical education, how they're keeping the students 12 feet apart. How does that compute to run sport programs like football or basketball or anything else for the regular sport?
Great question. You said with your social distancing in your phys ed classes that they have to be 12 feet apart, how do you run a sports program like football or... It's a great question, and I don't have an answer for you. I do believe that there's a lot of politics involved. Like right now, summer leagues are going on. Kids are playing baseball and softball right now. And they're not necessarily with certified coaches. Sometimes it's very unorganized and not structured. Middle and high school sports are with certified coaches, and it's structured and it's organized, and they practice and they play. So how can all of these summer leagues be going on, but then when you get to school and schools are open, you can't do it? I don't have that answer. It is very frustrating because there are things that don't make sense. Any other questions? I've said this since day one, and I've told our staff this, I've told our administrators this. We believe this is the best plan for us to reopen. Our top priority is your children and our staff here in a healthy and safe environment. I'm right there with you, with the anxiety, the stress, the unknowns. I think the most difficult part of our jobs is that we're supposed to have the answers. And sometimes we don't. And, you know, I could go back to my office right now and find new guidance. You know, we have the governor on every single day, and I'm just waiting for him to, you know, to drop another bomb on us. The guidance and what has come out has made it very, very, very difficult for schools to come back full time. But we have all got together and said, we're not going to let that stop us. We're going to find a way. And as I mentioned before, we don't have some of the challenges that other districts have. So, you know, we're thankful for that. But as the days and the weeks go on, you know, we're going to be monitoring. We don't have all the answers. And right now, this looks great on paper, but it might change. These documents, again, are live, and we're changing them constantly. And so we want you to understand that. We absolutely appreciate the community's support. The teachers have been awesome. Our support staff, from the cafeteria workers to the bus drivers, everybody is on board. And so we're gonna make this work. But if we can go into this year with a little bit of flexibility, a little bit of patience, a little bit of grace, that would help. And it's been tiring. This has been a summer that hasn't really been a summer. And so we're all going through this together. And when I got on the Zoom meetings with the superintendents, we have 22 different answers to a question. And everybody has, again, different ideas. But what I think is best, and what we think is best for this community is right here. So we certainly, support, we're thankful for your support. And moving forward, again, any questions, concerns, suggestions is greatly appreciated. But we just want to thank you because, 3 weeks will come by quick. And I think that's best for these kids is to be here with the teachers, in this learning environment. So, again, thank you for coming this morning. I'll certainly stick around if you have any other questions or concerns. But again, thank you. I do know that there might be families out there that aren't able to attend these meetings and may not see the live stream on Monday. Please give them this information. You know it firsthand. Again, if there's any questions, but our goal is to make sure that you're comfortable sending your children here. I will tell you, I have 2 daughters. I would send them here, just because I'm that confident in our plans. Now, that being said, it could get ugly real quick, but I believe we're ready for anything that comes our way. All right, thank you.